From long-lost nuclear weapons to some of the most startling discoveries of the century, here are 10 of the most amazing artifacts unearthed completely by accident. Number 10. The Venus de Milo. The Venus de Milo is one of the most famous sculptures in the world. However, according to Mental Floss, it actually spent several centuries buried out of sight on the Greek islands of Melos. The statue, which doesn't have any arms as you likely know, was recovered only in 1820 when a peasant accidentally found its top half while trying to salvage marble blocks from some ancient ruins. The accidental discovery caught the attention of a French naval officer who had been digging for antiques nearby. Keep in mind everyone was digging for antiques back then. And the French digger then basically stole the site from the peasant, freed the statue from the dirt, and in 1821, the statue was presented to King Louis XVIII and was donated to the Louvre. Since then, art historians have speculated who exactly the statue is meant to represent. People first assumed it was Venus, also known as the Greek goddess Aphrodite. Aphrodite, or Venus, was the goddess of love and passion. However, this statue is actually pretty mysterious. Some people suggest the sculpture is actually Amphitrite, the sea goddess who was worshipped fervently on the island where the statue was found. Other people claim she may have been a prostitute. The big issue is that her arms are missing, and nobody knows what she was holding in her hands before they were removed. If she'd been holding a spear, that would have meant something, whereas an apple would have meant something else, and a spool of thread would have meant even another thing. Number 9. Lost Nuke. There are not many things worse in this world to lose than a nuclear missile. You could lose your keys, you could lose your credit card, but what do you do when you lose a nuke? This particular nuke was found by a diver completely by accident. The diver had been wrapping up a day of fun on the Canadian West Coast when he stumbled upon the remains of the first known American nuclear weapon to have ever been lost. According to the man himself in a report from The Guardian, he had just been looking for fish when he got a little far from his boat, and that's when he spotted it. The object was enormous, about 12 feet long, and looked like a bagel cut in half. At first he thought it was a UFO, but further investigation revealed that it was a nuke. The locals have actually known about a missing bomb for quite a long time. It had gone missing over the Pacific during a training flight back in 1950. The bomber left the base in Alaska and was supposed to do a simulated drop in San Francisco when 3 of the engines caught on fire. The crew had to abandon the bomber and jettison the bomb over the Pacific Ocean. The good news here is that the bomb was actually a dummy. It was packed with lead and not with a plutonium core. After the incident, a Canadian Navy ship was deployed with a special team to determine if there was any risk and what exactly they should do about the bomb. But if it is indeed a dummy nuke with lead instead of plutonium, it's probably still sitting at the bottom of the ocean. Number 8. Hairpin of Catherine de' Medici. Catherine de' Medici was a French queen in the 16th century, and a gold hairpin belonging to her was found by accident in an extremely bizarre place. The precious relic was discovered by archaeologists while they were excavating the Henry IV courtyard, just outside of Paris in preparation for an upcoming project. The French queen served France from between 1547 and 1559, and was famous across Europe for her taste in jewelry. Throughout the centuries, most of her exquisite collection has been lost or stolen. This made it even more exciting when the archaeologists discovered the pin. Where did they find this gold hairpin? It was in a communal toilet. Not a recent toilet, of course, but it was part of the excavation. Researchers figured it could have been a servant who took the pin from Catherine, and then it simply fell into the toilet completely by accident, which would have been a pretty pointless theft for the servant. But in any case, that gold hairpin had sat in the communal toilet for close to 500 years before being found completely by accident. Number 7. Hidden Tomb. This hidden tomb looks like something out of a horror movie. If you were to find this by accident and not be cursed, I'd be surprised. But really, the tomb was actually found by accident when a Greek farmer stumbled upon it in his olive grove. This happened on the island of Crete in Greece, when the local man was trying to park his vehicle and accidentally unearthed the grave. It's an old Minoan grave, and it dates back to around 3,400 years ago. Inside the tomb were a pair of clay coffins that were popular during the Bronze Age. The tomb was also filled with colorful funerary vases that suggested the deceased were of a high status. But what's incredible is that this underground enclosure had been forgotten for over 3,000 years. That's a long time to forget about something. And during that time, an olive grove had grown over the tomb. It makes you wonder how many tombs are underneath our feet right now. Of course, the proper authorities were called after the discovery, and the 2 sealed coffins were found full of bones. The entire tomb was perfectly preserved, no doubt thanks to its perfect spot underneath the farmer's grove. Number 6. The Terracotta Army. Some of the most amazing discoveries in the world have been found by accident. Take penicillin, for example, found completely by accident. And considering how huge China is and how rich of a history China has had over the last 10,000 years and more, it's no surprise that crazy discoveries are only just now being found by accident. We're all familiar with the Terracotta Army, the thousands of life-sized soldiers, horses, and chariots from the 3rd century BC that were constructed to guard Emperor Qin Shi Huang in the afterlife. But did you know that these warriors were found completely by chance? It happened in 1974 when a group of farmers were digging a well close to the city of Chen, when one of them hit a statue in the head with their shovel. They were basically digging in their backyard when they came upon the statues. First, the man thought they had discovered a bronze bust, or some kind of ancient sculpture hidden in the dirt. But when the archaeologists arrived and further excavations were done, there were over 8,000 of the soldiers found. This is one of the most extensive tombs in the world. In fact, it's so large that there are still occasional discoveries being found by archaeologists constantly at the site. What's really interesting about the soldiers is that each one has its own unique face. These are some of the most detailed statues in the world, considering the sheer volume of them and how each soldier is uniquely different. The Terracotta Army is considered to be one of the most important archaeological treasures ever discovered in China. And other than the Great Wall of China, it's definitely the #1 tourist attraction now. And all because some farmers wanted to dig a well. Number 5. The ULUBURUN shipwreck. The ULUBURUN shipwreck was first discovered in 1982 by a diver who had been swimming in the Mediterranean Sea off the coast of Turkey. He was absolutely surprised when he found himself facing the ruins of a giant 50-foot sunken ship. The ancient wreck had been sitting there at the bottom of the sea for so long that most of its hull had disappeared. But before surfacing, the diver did spot a group of ceramic jars along with hundreds of ingots. That's right, he found glass, copper, and tin ingots sitting under the water. For the next 10 years, underwater archaeologists made 11 consecutive trips to the wreck with a total of 22,413 dives, according to Archaeology News Network. Throughout all those dives, they recovered a ridiculous number of Bronze Age relics. They found some pretty incredible artifacts, actually. Elephant tusks, hippopotamus teeth, ancient jewelry, and even a scarab inscribed with the name of the ancient Egyptian queen Nefertiti. Carbon dating from a piece of firewood found underwater confirmed that the ship was at least 3,000 years old. This makes the shipwreck one of the oldest ever found. And what's even more interesting is that historians are not completely certain of its origins. It was likely a cargo ship moving between the Mediterranean, but among the relics were many strange artifacts from Egyptian and Assyrian backgrounds, as well as some other artifacts from other civilizations. That leads researchers to believe that the ship was a merchant vessel with an international crew. Number 4. Rosetta Stone. Believe it or not, the Rosetta Stone was found completely by accident. It all started when Napoleon Bonaparte began his Egyptian campaign in the late 18th century. You know, the campaign where Napoleon bombarded the pyramids with his cannons? Anyway, Napoleon brought with him a special unit of historians and scientists who were tasked with the job of collecting relics and studying the history of Egypt. It was while soldiers were in the middle of knocking down some ancient walls to make improvements to their French fort near the small town of Rosetta that they found the giant basalt slab, now known as the Rosetta Stone. The experts quickly identified the stone as being from somewhere around the 2nd century BC. The reason the stone is so fascinating is because it's inscribed with ancient writing in 3 different languages: in Greek, Demotic, and in hieroglyphics. It took over 20 years for language experts to crack the code of the writing on the rock. Any knowledge of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics had been lost for centuries. However, once the glyphs were deciphered, scholars were then able to begin a truly in-depth study of the ancient Egyptian language and all their ancient literature. The stone itself is not overly mysterious, but it did prove to be an invaluable cipher for scientists. It's currently sitting at the British Museum in London behind a large box of glass. Number 3. Unexploded bomb. Everyone loves a good bomb story. This one comes from 2018. A bomb disposal team was dispatched to the German state of Brandenburg after an unexploded bomb had been discovered completely by accident during scheduled work on the site of a tram depot. According to local news reports, the bomb was actually an American one from World War II. It was apparently the 192nd unexploded bomb to be discovered in that general area. And that's not that surprising, as even though it's been 70 years since the war, there are still a lot of unexploded ordnance scattered throughout Germany. Near the end, Germany really was the final battlefield. This latest incident caused a giant disruption of the transport network, since it was found at a tram station. However, everything got back to normal soon enough. But it was the third time that a bomb had needed to be defused over the last 3 months in that German state. Also, there was an incident in April in which a British bomb was discovered on a building site and thousands of people had to be cleared from the area. The good news is that most of these incidents are completely harmless. The artifacts have been sitting in the ground for almost 100 years, and they're not likely to explode completely by accident. But it's still gotta be an unnerving experience for the worker whose shovel smashed into the side of a rusting explosive. Number 2. Dead Sea Scrolls. Everyone knows about the Dead Sea Scrolls by now. They contain some of the earliest pieces of the Bible known to man. However, if it had not been for a group of teenagers back in 1947, the scrolls may never have been found at all. It happened completely by accident when a group of sheep herders who were tending to their flock near the ancient city of Jericho found a nearby cave. They had been looking for a lost goat when one of the boys threw a stone into a cave and heard something shatter. All the boys ran to investigate the small cave, and they found several jars which contained a vast collection of extremely old papyrus scrolls. They didn't know at the time, but these scrolls would eventually become legendary. They would also become extremely valuable. The scrolls were later sold for millions of dollars, but the kids had no idea what they were worth at the time. According to History.com, they actually sold them to an antiques dealer for under $50. Since then, the Dead Sea Scrolls have captivated scholars and treasure hunters all over the world. After a spark of relic hunters scoured the area after the initial find, even more of the scrolls were found. Together, the artifacts are now considered the most significant archaeological discovery of the 20th century. Not only do they contain extremely old passages from the Bible, but among the scrolls are treasure maps that could supposedly lead a person to untold buried wealth. To this day, though, nobody has ever located any of the treasures told about on the maps. Number 1. DERINKUYU Underground City. While not technically an artifact, the story of the DERINKUYU underground city is too amazing not to be on this list. It all happened back in 1963 when a local man demolished a wall while renovating his home in the Cappadocia region of Turkey. Behind the wall was an ancient passageway leading down into the forgotten city. Just imagine breaking open your kitchen wall to discover the portal to Narnia, because that's basically what happened. This passage in the man's wall led to the ancient underground city, which is completely hand-carved from volcanic ash. It's one of the most elaborate subterranean metropolises in the world. It contains 18 stories and enough space to house at least 20,000 residents. It's a vast network of tunnels and passageways, and experts are still not sure who even built it or when. According to History.com, the site contains meeting halls, shops, stables, and there were even heavy stone doors left over to protect the residents. This is one of the most incredible archaeological discoveries of the last century, and it was uncovered behind the wall of some random guy's house. Which of these amazing discoveries is most shocking? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. See you again soon for another awesome video.